What's going on, everybody? I'm Tim, and I'm with the channel Tabletop Terrors that I run with my brother. And if this is your first time watching, we believe that everyone can be more creative, and we try to prove that using tabletop RPGs. So this is Offhand Attack, a stream from my car. Some people make fun of me for it. Some people give me mad props for it, but I'm happy for anyone who wants to take part in it. So we're gonna jump right in here. Today I have a question that a new game master asked me, and I want you to help me answer this question. And it's about clerics specifically. But before we move further, before we do anything else, one of the things we always do here at Tabletop Terrors is the Tabtarian toast, because you are Tabtarians. So I got my red monster here. So, may you mend the first break. May you kill the first snake. And may you conquer everything you undertake. Slanja. So, Offhand Attack is a live stream from Facebook. So, there are folks joining us here. Let's see who's in the chat. Drake Warren is here. What up, man? Jeremy Lilly says, howdy, everyone. Matt Lennington, howdy, y'all. What's up? And Morgan Grover is here. So, the question, and I'm going to do a little bit of reading, a little bit of sort of paraphrasing, but the basic question is, there's a DM named Eric, and he says, I have a player that wants to play a gnome cleric in the trickery domain that doesn't know he's a cleric. So the basic idea is that this player, we'll call him, Ready Player One. So Ready Player One wants to play a cleric and says he wants to cast spells through his tinker items. He doesn't want to have any official cleric training. And so the player is saying, there are no changes in game mechanics, Dungeon Master. There's no change. The Dungeon Master, Eric, says, I disagree. Because it's directly tied to a deity. And so, what do you think about this? Because the true topic here is something that I'm getting more and more, I think, resolute in. And it's that you can solve almost anything by reskinning. But what do you think about that? First thoughts, you're a dungeon master. Would you allow it? If so, how? That's what I want to know. What's up, Matt? Joey Byers, how's it going, everyone? It's a good day so far, man. It's a Wednesday. It feels like a Wednesday. That's good. Really busy at work. Really busy with Absolute Tabletop. You can check out absolutetabletop.com for some of our books. Howdy, y'all. Ben Fisher's here. Enoch says, hi, Tim. What's going on, Enoch? Alessandro Spaciani. Did I say that right? Hey, Tim. Hey, what's up, man? Oh, Josh Glisson. Skull. Nathan Thurston. Woo! Dale says, what's up, Quint? Nothing much at the moment, thank you. Ben Fisher says, that sounds awesome. I agree with that. Now, let me read, see if anybody's hit this. I think that the approach is better for a paladin. You stole my answer, Alessandro. You stole my answer. But Drake Warren says, love gnomes, trickery domain, love it. Reskin it. I do it, says Ben Fisher. Tyler Hurst is here. Nate Vanderzee of WASD20 is here. And he says, Timothy, I want you all to do something right now. If you're watching this on a desktop computer, I want you to open another browser window, and I want you to go to WASD20's YouTube channel. Nate recently released the third video in his dungeon series, and it's fantastic. It's a really great video. You need to watch that series, especially if you're a new DM and you're looking to run a dungeon. So go check that out. Put it in your watch later, or heck, skip me and you watch him now. It's a really, really good video. So check that out. Let's see. Alessandro says, I said it right. Woohoo! Tyler Hurst says, I finally made it back to a live one. Listen, man, I haven't been doing many live ones. My day job has required me to skip lunches for a couple of weeks, and so it's been the old eat at my desk situation. I usually do these on my lunch break in my car at work. I was thinking, I had a weird thought, and I thought, I hope that there's a day that I write RPGs full time. And I thought it would be really funny because I would probably still, just out of the ritual of it and the habit, come out to my car to do these. I thought that'd be fun. All right, Matt Lennington says, absolutely, makes everyone happy and doesn't break the game. Enoch Newkirk says, if the cleric is in the trickery domain, then the god or goddess is tricky and smart like Loki. So he or she can use others to get the cleric to do their bidding without letting the cleric know he's actually serving the god or goddess. Enoch, on my wedding ring, that was going to be my answer. So I totally agree with that. So Eric, here's the thing. I used to be too controlling as a game master. And I started playing in a game called The Provokers. And one of the things I really learned from Matt Click is that he's super yes and. Sometimes he's just yes. So when I play with him in a game, you know, sometimes my sphincter gets too tight if a player tries to name a tavern. I'm like, no, I don't want it to be that name. But I'm really letting up on that because it just gives the world a sense of true variety that would occur in life. And so that's the thing that I dealt with, was being too controlling in my games. And I realized that if I give players free reign, it shapes the campaign and opens up new avenues that wouldn't have existed otherwise. So, mechanics-wise, it would be a little different, okay? But I love the idea that the god of trickery, this is how I would play it. I would play it that the gnome believes that they are a really good inventor. And they just think that they're brilliant and that they're on a hot streak. Meanwhile, they're getting these ideas whispered into their mind by this deity, or a servant of the deity, or something like that. And so they come up with these new inventions and these new ideas and all these things that can do things like turn undead. And they think it's something as simple as like, and I would let the player come up with very low-key, non-game breaking flavor for how these inventions work. So I wouldn't really tie mechanics to them, other than I'd say, describe to me how your turn undead works. And I would say, you know, I'd give you an example of one that I would use. So let's say it's this little sonic whoozy-what's-it trinket jammer that they put down and wind up, and it kind of puts out this sort of like low pulsating hum, and that's turn undead. And it's essentially reskinned like, this sound is, it detracts the undead. It rattles around what's left of their cochlea, you know, whatever you want to do there. But the truth is, my encouragement to you would be to say, yes, and. Yes, I will let you do this, and here are some of the things that I would want, and kind of go from there. So, probably not the answer you were expecting or maybe looking for, but as long as it's not game breaking and the player has a good attitude and is playing ball with you and kind of looking to tell a cool story, there's not a lot I wouldn't allow. I'm going to tell you something else, is that at the end of the day, unless you're planning on putting what you're doing in a book, it's not going to affect the canon of your world or anything like that. There are not really necessarily readily available firearms in the world of Dragongrin, but I allowed a player in one of my games to use a rifle because it was really cool for the story. Now, outside of that story, no one has really used a rifle since then. So it wasn't like really introducing rifles into the world. But, so anyway, yes, let us check the chat again and see what some other folks are saying. Joseph Kraft says WASD 20 rocks. Yes, he does. Nathan Wyatt, I like the concept, and I'd say yes, but I do think it'd take some work and tweaking on the mechanic side. My player's character have all the things have been granted things like this over the course of our story. Okay, that is fair. There would be things that come up like, how do you turn undead? How do you do things? My initial agreement with the player would be, let's say you have some crazy inventions laying around, a handful that, you know, can do some different things, and then let's just flavor things. So the mechanics stay the same, but the flavor is different. And I'm actually going to tell you, after we finish this little bit of the conversation, I want to tell you something that I wouldn't have agreed with 6 months ago. It's going to be interesting. Nate Vandersea says, thanks, Tim. You got it, Nate. Dude, loving the video series, man. Sean DeJazo is here. The Mapronomicon says, my first question would be, what type of god does he want secretly helping him? Describe it to me. Then I'll have a better idea of what I can do with the story or plot. Absolutely, that's actually a good point. He wanted to do a, it was like Murland, I believe is my fake pronunciation for the day. It's a wizard demigod from the Greyhawk setting that is supposed to be a god of magic and technology, but I think he wants to use the domain of trickery. So I would probably reskin that as one of the... I believe that it is a deity who is posing as the god of magic and technology, but truly is a god of trickery. Or something like that. Oh, Ben Fisher put the link, I believe, to Nate's video. Nate says, don't skip Tim. Mike Stafford's here. Nate Vandersea says, or don't skip Tim, no comma. Don't skip, Tim. I'm my own worst grammar cop. Tyler Hurst says, I always appreciate the videos from the car. Feels more friendly and face-to-face. Thanks, man. You know, it is what it is. You're hanging out with me. We're hanging out. We're all hanging out together, you know? This is Tabtarian. A long time ago, James and I decided we were going to stop trying to be something we weren't. But we had to realize we were trying to be something we weren't first. If that makes any sense. But, yeah, man, it's all about hanging out and us. Being ourselves. Not like it's all about us, but it's all about us being us, is what I meant. Brad Proctor's here. Nicholas Ashmore says, my DM style is heavily inspired by Winds of Cercily and Provokers. So's mine. Barker and Matt help me understand what I think a true D&D session for me should be. And so I totally agree with that. Rob Franklin's here. Ben Fisher says, both I and Matt have played characters that used devices that tie to a spell. They believe that they're artificers of a sort, and crafting these objects and the numbers or mechanics behind it all remains the same. The gnome could be similar, with the devices being more mechanical. That is an awesome idea. Can I have that player move to my neighborhood, please? So, Eric, I don't know if you're watching live. I don't know if you're going to see this. I'll put it on YouTube. But that would be my suggestion. And if you have any other further questions, because Eric emailed us, he sent some cool... He posted a YouTube comment and then sent a great email to the Tabletop Terrors email. And so I told him, hey, you know what? I'll do a stream on this. The Mappernomicon said, you could also flavor the tinkerings. Lower level spells, simple trinkets. Higher level spells, more complex, larger or smaller trinkets, etc. That's actually a really good idea. And it also gives the player an opportunity to really take ownership and start to come up with trinkets and inventions and things like that. Again, it's all flavor. So you're not going to have to worry that he invents, the plus 10 jet boots of, jetpack jumping. So the mechanics are all there, and that's going to kind of get me into my next thing. And this is actually going to be, I'm going to be talking about Chris Wilhelm of Drop Dice and Lloyd of Jarl DM, and even Matt Click from the Provokers and A Fistful of Dice. I'm going to tell you something. Anyway, I would have disagreed with myself a few months ago, but now I'm like, you know what? This is my hard and fast rule. I'll tell you that in a second, as soon as I get through these comments. Ben Fisher says also, your cooperative play does not have to establish any canon for your world whatsoever. Ben, that is absolutely the tact that I take from here on out, which is I used to be so afraid that anything that happens is canon. No, my Dragon Grin should be different than even James's Dragon Grin, because that's more fun, and for me anyway. So yeah. Ben Blumenscheid says, no spell references, the cleric has to describe the effect. Oh, cool. That's a really good way to do it. That's actually really clever. Tyler Hurst says, I would absolutely allow players to flavor their classes in this way. For example, in the Carcerlock game on the Performance Check channel, I played a druid with spells flavored as potions, and it was super epic. Rob was a great DM about it and highly encouraging, as well as it should be. Jacob Norman says, I have no idea what we're talking about. Quick TLDR, a character wanted to play a gnome cleric who didn't know he was a cleric and was in the trickery domain. And so we've been talking about whether you'd allow it in your games or whether you disallow it and how. And there have been some really great ideas. Tyler Hurst says, I understood, Tim. Good. Mike Stafford, I played a psionic flavored cleric once. That is really smart. It was pretty sweet. Things just kind of happened. Undead appear, then poof. They're ash. That type of stuff returning. Made for an interesting character. That does make for an interesting character. Hey, Chris. Chris is here. I'm going to talk about you in a second. Mike Lasham is here as well. Tyler says, you guys are too chill to make it all about you. It is true, man. Let's see here. Mike Lasham is here. You got to check out Mike Lasham's channel. He's doing this series, and he is just grinding through. It is Mike Space The Piper on YouTube, and he's doing a monster tactics series where he's going through the monster manual, and you'll know it by the thumbnail. It's this wicked cool camo thumbnail with a picture of the monster, and Mike walks you through how you should use monsters in combat to get the most out of them, so that you're not just dropping them like pawns in the middle of the battlefield, hoping that they do something that's useful, but playing them tactically and shrewdly, which is, I think, super great. Let's see here. Okay, so the Mappernomicon says, maybe your orisons are all on a Swiss Army-inspired gadget, and a first and second level could be like in a toolbox. I would tell my player, if you want to be a tinkerer, then tinker. Show me you can create awesome, cool ways to be creative in-game, and you'll get no end of praise from me. That's actually a really good way to do it, is kind of collaborate with them and say, hey, you know what? You have a toolbox. Put these pieces together and tell me cool ways that they affect the world. That's actually really clever, man. You guys are so smart. I love talking things out with this group, because you're just all positive and smart. It's not so common nowadays. Let's see here. Dan Dingman is here. Dan Dingman's art is fantastic. Jacob Norman says, I'm playing a cleric who doesn't know he's a cleric in Drake's Dragon Chronicles, Cleric of the Tempest. That's a great point. And then Ben Fisher put another link. Sam DiMercurio joined. Sam actually just put up at Chalice and Chains, he put up a great video about character concept versus character mechanics, which I think sort of ties in with this, so check that out as well. Let's see here. Tyler Hurst says, I'd look at the gnome as kind of being force sensitive, sort of like the Star Wars FFG books, which is Fantasy Flight Gaming. He's really good at tinkering and making those effects with his trinkets, and he's not certain why. Seriously, an awesome way to flavor a Divine Cleric. Hey, Locrius Dio Tenalpa's here. Listen, I'm going to hang out with Locrius tonight. We're going to just hang out. We have a hangout planned. I don't even know what we're talking about or what we're doing, but when Locrius says, hey, do you want to hang out? Tim says yes. So, I'm really pumped. I'm really looking forward to that. So I want to talk about something, and I said I was going to talk about Drop Dice and Lloyd Collins and so on. Chris Wilhelm of Drop Dice posted a really good question, and he asked this question, and I think it ties in to this concept we're talking about. He said, sword and sandal games are a great genre. They have a really cool flavor. But how would you reskin armor? Because in the sword and sandal stuff, it's much more stripped down than the classic medieval fantasy that we're used to. I understand that some armor exists, so I'm not talking about whether it exists or not. I'm just talking about, is it commonplace, is it readily available, and is it usable to fit the tone and flavor of the setting? And the answer is, it can be tricky. So Chris was asking, hey, how would you do that? There were some really good ideas. Matt Click made more robust shields. So in his setting, Estia, he essentially added a couple more shield options so that players could get a little more of a beef from having a bigger, bulkier shield. There were a lot of really good thoughts, concepts, but I wanted to say what I've found is my kind of default now is my first step for absolutely anything is reskin the existing mechanics. And this is really hard to hear. Reskin the existing mechanics. Do the thing we just talked about with this cleric tinker. Try that first, because there are mechanics in place for 5e, and while everyone might not think they're perfect, you can't refute the fact that they have hundreds of hours and thousands of people who have play tested them. And so they are sound enough to work better than most unplay tested, spur of the moment homebrews. I'm not anti-homebrew. In fact, you could even say that I make supplementary income off of writing homebrew books for Absolute Tabletop. So I love homebrew. But my first piece of advice for any dungeon master is, if you have an opportunity to reskin something, reskin it. Just use the mechanics that exist and get creative. The second piece of advice I would give to any dungeon master is reskin it. So the two top things, the first one is, can you reskin it to get this effect? Because that was my advice to Chris. I said, honestly, man, let the armor class, that is a number. It is a number that within the system, I have to roll to hit you. Now, in our minds and in 5th edition, that number is represented by this floating piece that we call armor that we then stick onto our character sheet. So it's this floating bauble with a number assigned to it and a couple of different criteria that we stick onto a character. So, here's what I mean. Don't think of it as what kind of armor do I need to make it. Think of it as this floating bauble. Now we call it armor class, but it has a lot more to do with battle prowess and dexterity. Figuratively, meaning the mechanics of the game, raw, on the chassis, no body, no paint job, can be reskinned or resurfaced for absolutely anything. So that would be my first thought is, you're in a sword and sandal sort of epic game, follow the exact same rules you would follow. The class restrictions, the monetary restrictions, the character building, all of those things, the proficiency, everything. Follow that to the T, make your character. From there, use these play-tested, gorgeous, like Mercedes-Benz mechanics and put whatever body and paint job and so on. And this is something that I'm basically I'm thinking of it, I'm calling it, even though it's reskinning, I'm calling this the resurface. I'm resurfacing things. It's the resurface method, where look down at the engine and this thing that runs like a sweet, sweet dream, and then you just reshape it any way you want. And I think that is an unpopular thing. It kind of makes you wince for a second, but it is the easiest, cleanest way to do it. What do you think? Nicholas Ashmore, talking further back here, says, oh man, guiding bolt could be super cool. It's like a super glowing little sticky bomb that's a tracker. It glows and sticks to the enemy, granting advantage. That's so clever. And basically flavored stuff for damage, so the spell slots equate to the number of these things that he carries around. I love that idea. And that's a great idea of resurfacing. It's a great idea of, and the reason why I'm calling it resurfacing is because to me, oftentimes reskinning is, okay, I have to change this armor to another armor. What I'm suggesting is, no. Change the floating mechanic, the bauble that you hook on to your character. Okay, this is my, this is the number people need to roll to hit me. And you can assign it to anything. In a sci-fi game, you could make it a force field. You could make it, this is going way out there, but I'm saying you could even make it that your armor class is how intelligent you are on the battlefield. Well, that messes with intelligence. And it's like, listen, my point is, there is no rule as long as the number plays well with the system and you and your dungeon master are okay with it. Don't limit yourself. Don't just reskin, resurface. Alan Holloway is here. Hey, tonight on Check for Traps, Alan Holloway is running a Copper Jackals game. Copper Jackals are a paramilitary force in our campaign world of Dragongrin. The prep alone that Alan has shared with me for this game is so good, and I want to watch it right now. I wish I could watch it right now, but I can't. But I will tonight. So check that out tonight. It's going to be a really, really good, very well-flavored Copper Jackals game. He was even bouncing some mechanics off me for the opening sort of scene, and I'm excited to see it play out. Loki says, sup everybody? Rob Coletta is here, the DM of the infamous Lore Keepers himself. What I miss? Hello, Grius! Morgan Grover says, really? It seems as if they're basically ciphers reskinned over for D&D. Hey everyone, hey Tim. Ben Fisher said, the second link he posted was Mike the Piper's Monstrous Tactics. Thank you. Alan Holloway says, keep it simple, do it light. Oh, do it. Light +2, medium +5, heavy +8. Impose stealth penalty for medium and heavy. Heavy reduces speed by 10. Can't cast spells in medium, and heavy, or at least impose a con save. I gotta be honest with you, man. Reading that out loud, it did not sound simple. But I get what you're saying. That's why I would just say, use the 5e rules, and you could say that you're a space sheriff on, an asteroid ranch. Josh Rivera, hey Tim. Hey, what's up, man? Joan Burke, hey, it's Eric with Cleric Gnome Issue. I'm listening. Oh, perfect. Dude, you're gonna be super jazzed. This whole stream, like the first 20 minutes, was just all about the issue. So that's awesome. Let's see. Joan says, I'm going to do it, but I think it's going to be a focus like a wizard. Carol Dunster is here. Rob Coletta says, you're the one that made the Lore Keepers infamous, bro. Oh, get out of here. You're a great DM and a great player. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I had for today. If I had time... Oh, Ken Napper just joined. And honestly, this really boils down to how long you crazy people will stick around. Hang on one second. Let me check something. All right, I've got time. If you all want to stick around, I was going to save this for a stream for tomorrow, but I'll do it now if you want to go for it. Have you guys ever heard of Have you ever heard of a quantum encounter? I was kind of talking about this on the Absolute Tabletop channel. Essentially, a quantum event in a D&D game, and the joke is they call it the quantum ogre, is that it's an event in a game that will happen no matter what. So it destroys the player agency, the player choice. Rob says, I just got here, so stick around. Awesome. So we're gonna do it big. So a quantum event in a tabletop game is an event that is going to happen no matter what the players choose. Okay? Some people think this is good, some people think this is bad. Player agency, for the sake of what we're talking about, is basically the control that you get as a player over the narrative. And what you say actually lets you shape the game. And I think with a good game master, you're like the game master. Basically, I'm granting you the ability to make choices that truly impact the game world. So that's player agency. These two things tend to fight each other. Understand? So if I have this player agency, this thing I'm supposed to be sharing with you, but then we'll say that that's a river. Woo, this is woo. It's the worst analogy, but the reason why I wanted to say that is because I wanted to put the quantum event in the middle of the river. It blocks it, or at least diverts it. So we're going to shoot that analogy in the head. The point is, a lot of quantum events and player agency clash, and that's where people feel railroaded, in my opinion. So how do you give players meaningful choice? Meaning that those choices I was talking about that actually change the game world. The outcome means that something happens. How do you give players meaningful choice, but still include some sort of quantum event? And here's an interesting thing. Okay, so here's this is what my point is. Going into this resurfacing method, I believe that it's my job as a game master to come up with the framework of a story that we're going to try to tell together. So for me, I've learned that the mechanical challenges that tax the resources of your character sheet are the toughest things for me to improv. Character moments, or concepts of a scene and the feel of a scene and how that kind of plays out, I can kind of do that stuff pretty quick, like all day. But knowing that you have X amount of hit points and that the monster you're fighting should be this many and kind of take away about this many per round and so on, so that you feel that you're in danger, I don't improv that stuff well. So for me, I got to prep that. So I feel like this resurfacing method can sort of half the quantum event. So what if a resurfacing event is a method where I take the mechanical challenges of a quantum event? Okay, so the example that is used in blog articles and that has been very highly popularized is It is the quantum ogre. And the idea, the joke, the reason why I call it the quantum ogre is because no matter which way you go, the ogre is there, you know. And they're using quantum mechanics to sort of half-jokingly explain how could I go anywhere in the world and still run into this ogre. And I think that's valid. And it also, as we talked about, it violates player agency to a degree. To another degree, there's a part of my brain that says, yeah, but I prepared this. This is what I have ready for you, is this cool ogre fight. So, yeah, how do I shoehorn it in? To me, resurfacing is a method by which I take this mechanical challenge that is in that quantum event, that quantum ogre, and I take it and I rip it out. Similar to how I gut and just have the chassis of the 5e mechanics, I take what an ogre represents, this encounter that I have for you, and then the mechanics occur, but reskinned to match the choices of your player agency. Okay? So I'm going to get into some examples, but I want to visit the chat. I think I'm way behind, and I want to make sure that I stay involved here. Let's see here. Ken Napper says, time travel? Carol Dunster says, yeah, stick around. All right, you got it. Here's to you. Carol Dunster is Grandma Abtab. Gotta listen to your grandma. Joan Burke says, how am I going to deal with the ignorance of his class? Ideas? Oh, yeah, man. So when this is done, you'll be able to rewatch the stream. And then also later today, maybe tonight, I post the videos on YouTube, so you'll be able to see the full YouTube video of this stream. So I think I'll have you totally covered. Nicholas says, yo, Eric, wait till after the stream. This video will be posted on Tabletop Terrors Facebook. Tim had some great ideas in the first part of the stream. Thank you. Joan Burke says, sounds good. Absorbing this quantum theory. Rob Cleta says, ooh, what about a quantum-locked villain like the Weeping Angels of Doctor Who? They can't move when perceived, the lonely assassins. Oh, that's very cool, like using it like that. Now, here are some examples of what I mean on a meta level of this quantum resurfacing. The players get to choose whatever they want. So let's say, you know, just for the sake of the example, I'm going to give 3 examples of where they can go. They can go wherever they want. That's player agency. But for the sake of this example, we're going to just keep it simple and say path A is the high road. Path B is the middle road. And then path C is the low road. So which way do you go as a player? Which way do you go? The challenge that I have prepared, okay, this is the mechanics. This is the quantum resurfacing. I have these mechanics, just the guts, the chassis. I want the players to have to speak with a character who will know them from their past. I want this character, this NPC, to have a high charisma so that they can be really threatening and dangerous as far as lying and manipulating. And I want them to want revenge on the players. So maybe we can even involve like a riddle or something. I don't know. That's the mechanic I have. Now here's where, as DMs, this is what we typically prep. We typically prep with, okay, I'm going to make this guy a guard from the city who saw a thing that the players did, and he knows about their past. Now, this is sort of a quantum event, because this person being on all 3 paths at the same time doesn't make as much sense, okay? So, to me, here's how you solve that, and here's the middle ground. This is, to me, the quantum resurfacing. If I go down path A, the players go down path A. The high road, this character is a mountain shepherd who perhaps witnessed something that the players did, right? Path B, same mechanics. Same mechanics. It's a riddle, high charisma, they want revenge, same mechanics. If they go down path B, the middle road, this character is that guard from the city we talked about, okay? If they go down path C, the low road, this character is a vagrant or a highway robber, something like that. So see how I've taken the mechanics, the thing that I want, the thing that I have prepped. I'm like, hey, these are the things I'm going to use to tax the character sheets. I've taken those things, and now I reskin them based on which location the players go to. Now, that was just 3 examples. If the players decide to go any which way, you decide sometimes on the fly who this character would be, but then you can run the exact same encounter, and to me, that destroys the negative side of the quantum event, which is destroying player agency. That narrative control we talked about, that ability for you to really make effective decisions that shape the outcome of the game. Your decisions still shape the outcome of the game, but here's what I did. I get to use my GM agency or my Dungeon Master agency, because we don't talk about that much. But I think the Dungeon Master should have agency equal to the players, not including my ability to be the final call and arbiter. Meaning, my agency says, okay, I can put this mechanical challenge anywhere as long as I reskin it in a way that is fair to you and lines up with the choices that you've made in your player agency. I think this is a really good balance. What do you think? And I'll use a couple other examples as well. Let's see here. Oh, Enoch says, Rob, nice to meet a fellow Whovian. I almost wore a shirt today. It's a Nike shirt, and it says just who it, and it's got the check, but it's a sonic screwdriver with a little like flame coming out of it, like a little whoop-de-doodle. Mike Stafford says, I would think the Weeping Angel flavor would be hard to play. Great for NPCs, though. Carol Dunster says, yep, listen to Grandma. Since I'm listening to you, it's only fair. Very true, milady. Knapper says, I just ran a time loop room with an undead king who was erased from history, and the room reset until they read his story on the walls. Oh my gosh, that's good. Ken, did you come up with that? Because that is baller. That is so good. Mike Stafford says, ooh, perfect for the Tinker Cleric. Sonic freaking screwdriver holy symbol. That's actually a really good point. That's very, very clever. Josh Glisson says, wow, started watching before I left for home. Now I'm home. Hey, I'm still here. He said, I didn't mean it as an angry. Was that you who angry faced me? I'm not a cool geek. I hate HP and Doctor Who. HP Lovecraft? Rob Cleta says, Doctor Who has taught me a lot about episodic storytelling. Let me tell you what else Doctor Who has taught me about. Doctor Who has taught me about a very free-form lore that still makes sense and for the most part follows its own rules. In one episode, the TARDIS can't do something. In another episode, it can. I'm okay with it because the emotional stories that they tell follow their own rules in the world. So, Doctor Who is really clever about perfect little character arcs and just the rule of cool. Taking the cool choice for the big story and making it work so that it affects the characters. And that's my favorite thing about Doctor Who, is they don't get bogged down. They have childlike wonder and, I think, very mature emotional themes that make you feel. So, Josh Glisson says, well, yes, Lovecraft too, but I meant Harry Potter. Oh, Harry Potter, sir! So I want to give you another example of this, and I want to know if you would do this as a dungeon master, if you agree with this. As a player, you wouldn't even know. I mean, you know now, but so if you play in one of my games, this is what I'm doing to you. And I guess that's part of the meta. That's part of me sharing this stuff with you, is that will be on the forefront of your mind. If you watch this and then I run a game for you, you'll know these things. You'll see up my sleeve. Which early on in the Tabletop Terrors world, James and I was always so anal about sharing stuff because revealing the prestige of the trick sometimes nullifies the trick to a degree. And I feel like I just like, you know what, forget it. Like, who cares? It's about sharing. It's about helping. It's about trying to give ideas. Anyway, here's another version of quantum resurfacing. Let's say the challenge that I have prepared, and I say, okay, I want the thing that I have prepped to tax your resources as players. I want to have a larger creature that spits out other smaller creatures each round. It's like a D6 of smaller creatures. So that's the main thing, and I've got this encounter planned, like, you know, hankering for an ale style, where it's like I've got my timer, my tret, and my threat. My timer, my treat, and my threat. So we've got path A, the high road. We've got path B, the middle road. And we've got path C, the low road. You players get to choose which way you go. But that's the mechanical challenge I have for you. I'm like, hey, I want to tax their resources this way. Path A, it's a rock creature. And it spits out these other little rock creatures, okay? So it's the same sort of thing. But it's skinned in the choice that you made. You went up into the mountains. I might also choose to give you a different treat, like depending on which way you go, you know. Path B, the middle road, we'll just do a simple reskin here and say it's a water creature that sort of multiplies. Now, you're going to feel very differently about the way that you fight a rock creature than a water creature as far as the way that you fight and tonally, typically, as far as your narrative goes, because I'm facing you with a different challenge. It's not the Quantum Ogre. It's not rock monster, rock monster, rock monster. It's the Dungeon Master and the Fates have saith that you will face this challenge. And then Path C, which is the low road, we'll say it's cavey, catacomby kind of way. It's a spider that spits out spider spawn. But my mechanics are all the same. So my quantum resurfacing is, I get my DM agency, so I'm able to have meaningful choice, but so are you. Now, how do you feel about that? Let's see here. Rob Coletta says, yes, the TARDIS has its own character agency. It doesn't do things it doesn't want to, and that's a genius thing. It absolutely is. They play it very well. Ken Napper says, thanks, I really appreciate that. Yes, I know I wanted to have some non-combat focused encounter, and it just lined up. Dude, that's really sharp, man. I love that idea. Enoch says, for my game, my players have avoided going down a certain path. But to drop hints for my players, I plan to reskin the initial encounter and have a fortune teller tell one of my players what his father would have told him, warning him about impending danger. There you go. And that's certainly a way to do it. Ken Napper says, got to give credit between you and Hankering. I've upped my DM game to the next level. Thanks, man. Ben Fisher says, ooh, the spiders. Carol says, oh, Dami ran something like that for me the last time we played. It was a lot of fun. He says, trying to work on the main boss while figuring out how to deal with the spawn. He loves tactical challenges when he DMs. Joan Burke says, okay, mechanically turning undead is divine channeling through a holy symbol. Now I'll make a scientific engineering process that the tinker does with his items. I wouldn't even go that far, man. I wouldn't even go that far. You said that you wanted to know if he could be a cleric without knowing it. And I say yes, because the god that he's serving is a trickster. So he really is turning the undead. But he believes it's his inventions, which means he is at the whim and at the mercy of this trickster deity. That is the best way to do it, I think. You know, the player is really being tricked. The character is, anyway. Anyway, that's my thought. I wouldn't take it much further than that because I think it's cool. But, I mean, obviously, do your own thing. But I wouldn't invent a new technological way to turn undead, literally. I would make it so that this dude thinks he's inventing. I just realized you didn't see all that. I am what is known as they say in some more sophisticated regions, a turd burglar. Carol Dunster says, he also found a way to block me and my NPCs from directly attacking the main boss, giving me a physical challenge. That's a good way to do it, making it so that you have to do something. But yeah, so that's it. That's my solution to the quantum event. That's my solution to the quantum ogre, which is quantum resurfacing, which is take the engine out of the car and put it other places, resurfaced as something entirely different, so that the players still have the agency to go wherever they want, but you have the agency to have a mechanical challenge prepared for them that fits the tone of what you're going for and matches the challenge of what their character sheets dictate. Oh, sweet. And Eric says he's gonna probably go that route. But well, I'm still willing to hang around if you guys are. That's pretty much it. That's all I had to say about the resurfacing. That's kind of the new thing I'm on. The first thing was mission statements and kind of really nailing it down. The second thing is resurfacing. I will say this. Let's see here. Oh, Ben says something here. Did you use this method in your Dragongrin game with the spider that spawns spiderlings and medium spiders, etc.? It seems like it. Great way to balance railroading and lazy prep methods. Might even work for one-shots that are generally railroady. I didn't use that method, but I wish I would have. Because that encounter is what gave me the idea. I tried a different play style in the Dragongrin game that I ran. If you guys haven't seen it yet, it's tricky to find that game because I don't have a full campaign title for it yet. But I think what I want to call it, I'm going to reveal in the next session. And so that is going to be when I name the campaign and so on. But when I ran that game, I did all mechanical challenges because the other 2 sessions out of the 3 were very narrative. They were really just about exploring the story and so on. They didn't quite feel like D&D. And so I thought, you know what? If you've ever seen a tree in the middle of a road that has those ties to keep it growing straight, every once in a while you'll see a tree that's bent and they have the ropes pulling super hard on it. It's because if a tree grows way too far in one direction, you can't just put it straight for it to correct. You got to bend it way back the other way. I had to bend it way back the other way. Like Beckham, the gardener. My gardener's name is Beckham. John Beckham. The point is that I thought, you know what, for this game, I'm going to balance out this campaign that I've been running, and I'm going to do a straight mechanical style game. It's going to be less narrative. So if you watch that game, I won't spoil anything, but as you work through, it's mechanical challenge, small rest, mechanical challenge, end of session. I wish I could change that a little bit. I wish I could just dial back my own narrative style. And that's what started to make me think about it. I was like, wait a second. The way I'm going to prep, and I'm going to do a prep video for this. We have the next Dragongrin game coming up, March 11th. And the prep video I'm going to do is essentially this new resurfacing method, where I'm going to have these different things that I want to occur, but I'm just going to have the mechanics. To the degree where if I have a character who I know, okay, I want this character to have someone from their past come into their present. In old games, it'd be like, hey, I'm going to choose the character that happens to. To me, now, depending on how the players react, like I said, I'm going to prep this role-playing challenge where it says, okay, I want this person to be from their past. I want it to be a character who will know them, have high charisma, and want revenge on them. And maybe I'll even do something totally random where I'm like, hey, whoever talks to this guy first, I'm going to make it part of their past. Talk about no quantum event. It's like, what if we randomize those sorts of things, you know? Ben Fisher says, I love prep videos. You know, that's what I hear, and I don't run enough games to show solid prep. I also got to tell you, is that I used to not prep at all. And that's the truth. I used to just wing it so much. So, let's see here. We'll do a couple more comments. Kyle Swanson says, Facebook always gives me these notifications too late. I missed the majority, but I caught the last 5 minutes or so. It's nice to see the cultural diffusion between Hankerin and Tabletop Terrors. I like his style in a lot of ways, and finding it blending with yours has created so many options. So when I found Hankerin, he is a room design, old school D&D player that focuses on sick, cool, simple mechanics. Just get out of this death trap. That's his jam. He creates encounters like nobody I've ever seen before. The reason why we approached him to do Encounter Machine is because I was like, dude, James and I have like stories coming out of our ears. We have no problem with coming up with character and scenes. And I was like, what if you blend those two things together? What if it was the kind of, you know, reskinning and like character stuff from Tim and James and the core mechanics of Hankerin? I was like, that would be fun. I'd like to listen to that. Sean DeJesus says, the part that gets me about the high, medium, and low path with regards to your player decisions is that unless you run the adventure multiple times, you'll never know the bandit wasn't on the other paths. Might as well just put the NPC on the path they choose. Just my 2 cents. I don't disagree. I got to tell you the truth, I don't disagree. And if it works out that way, that's what I do. And that's the quantum ogre. Some people say that that's not fair. You know, my thought is to future-proof the fact that they might go into the dungeon before you have a chance, and there's no way that the NPC could be in there. Now you're, and trust me, I think most of us have this thought process of like, okay, and you're trying to think of this, you're trying to rack your brain as to, okay, this NPC, he's in the dungeon. Why is he in the dungeon? Maybe he was captured. He was kidnapped. All right, yeah, he was kidnapped. He was kidnapped, and all of a sudden and what happens is, it's cool, it can be really cool, but you can absolutely accidentally come up with this totally weird side story that now you're trying to explain 5 ways, and you're like, So what I'm suggesting is, if you need that to happen, have it happen, but it is a denizen of the dungeon now, somehow, because the mechanics are still reskinned. So that's my suggestion. I agree with you. Listen, simplicity is key, you know. Tabtarian Razor? No, not really. Occam. That guy beat me to it. But the simplicity is there. If you can just run it that way, run it that way. But what I'm suggesting is, especially for mechanical challenges and other things, if the players feel as though... Because here's what I think we do as Dungeon Masters. I think we shepherd players into the area we want the encounter to happen. And that's where player agency gets shot in the back of the head. Like a St. Valentine's Day massacre. And you're like, well, I got that ogre in the woods, so yeah, so you guys you should really go to the woods. We don't want to go to the woods. Yeah, but it's a really good idea, and I think there's a treasure there, and there's a unicorn, and he farts glitter, it turns into silver coins, so you probably want to go. And it's like, instead, having this quantum resurfacing, you can make it so it's like, oh, you want to go to the mountains? Fine. I've got the same thing, and this time it's a ram that farts glitter. No, I'm just kidding. Rob Cleta says, nothing wrong with winging it if you're well informed. I totally agree with that too. Listen, man, Matt Click, when he saw my prep notes for the Crux games, he goes, you are a prep light Bigfoot. Because it was like 3 lines, like, of what would happen. The issue that I found with that is that if I do that every time, I'm constantly spitting new story threads that are just on my mind at the time, and there's never a sense of an arc where there's a middle and then closure, because it's constantly just new storylines. Like, woo! I'm like, I don't know what happened last session. Someone got shot or something. I don't know. So the winging it is good, but after I wing it, what I found is I need a good scene sequel session where I go, okay, what are the consequences of my winging it? What happened? And when the players made these choices, what will be the next thing? So totally. Ken Napper says, I do 60% prep with nothing nailed down, so tangents are not so much of a problem. Extra bits lead to cool stories. I'm totally down with that. Kyle Swanson says, watching his videos actually helped, talking about hankering for an ale, Drunkens and Dragons. Watching his videos actually helped me with an original D&D game I played recently. We're level 1 and had to take out several bandits and one who must have been ogre power level. But thanks to clever environment of a rope bridge and a bonfire, they were able to get out alive. Very cool. Enoch says, any advice on making mega dungeons? Not dungeons that last a whole campaign, but dungeons that may last a few sessions and are like 3 or 4 levels deep. Are you familiar with a method called the 5-room dungeon? Have you ever heard of that? Google that, because essentially, and this isn't, I mean, you know, I could do a whole stream on dungeon design and who lives there, why do they live there, who built the dungeon, and all those things. Those are questions you need to ask yourself. But as far as running a fun mega dungeon, you got to go down to the mission statement. You hear the Tabtarian mission statement. What are you doing? I want to run X using Y that feels like Z, or, you know, one of those where it's like, what do you mean by super dungeon? You need to define that, quantify it. Do you mean a dungeon with a lot of rooms? Do you mean a dungeon that's endless? That matters because it's different. So to me, define what you mean, figure out the tone, the feel, the genre, a horror super dungeon, pulp super dungeon, you know, all these things matter. But I would take and use the 5-room dungeon method, and I would just, basically, the way I would do it is I would have the players run about 5 rooms per session, or as many as we can get through. And the truth is, to have a true super dungeon feel, this is dangerous and deadly, to have a true super dungeon feel, there has to be a random aspect to it, because in a real dungeon, the weak creatures don't all just hang up on the first level, and then the stronger on the second, and the strongest on the third. It's like, there have to be wandering monsters, I think. There have to be powerful things. They should be able to run into a vampire or a minotaur, like almost right out of the gate, and then try to run away. Well, that's not fair. And it's like, well, when you say super dungeon, I think deadly. I think, so I would try to use the 5-room dungeon method, and then I would just link a bunch of 5 rooms together until it started to feel a little stale. And every cool super dungeon needs a boss, right? Rob Coletta says, I think you're winging it just allows you to create more. You're great at it, man. But yeah, sometimes we need more prep to keep us straight and true to what originally envisioned. Let me say this. I love winging it. I love it. That's my favorite thing. But I feel like I have to do a wing it and a, loose ends. A winging it and a loose ends. Because I have to tie things up, or else what I found, the feedback I've gotten from, not this campaign, but from people in the past, is it always seems like there's a new focus, because I'm always just like, and now it's a murder mystery, and now it's a Wild West shootout. And it's like, so I totally agree, man, and thank you. And winging it is cool, and it matters, and I think I do it well. But I am finding, okay, I have to have sequels to this winging it so it feels cohesive, and there are consequences. But yeah, totally. Let's see here. Carol Dunster says, learned about the 5-room dungeon from Matt Click's video on it. Great concept. Absolutely. And John 4 of Role-Playing Tips invented the method. He made it up. And so, as far as I know, so he has this free ebook that you just get a free book of 5-room dungeons. And there's got to be 30 in there, maybe more. So, honestly, if you want to just super cheat, just go find John 4. Role-Playing Tips is his blog, and you can sign up. Just type in 5-room dungeons. I think you can get a free PDF by just signing up for his mailing list, and then just run those. Run each one of those 5-room dungeons until you feel like the dungeon's over. Kyle Swanson, can there be any better super dungeon boss than a beholder? I don't know, man. That's a toughie. Classic. And their paranoia gives a reason for the dungeon to be made. They didn't want adventurers to make it through and kill them. Dude, a beholder is a classic super dungeon boss. I'm also a fan of liches. A good old-fashioned lich. What else? I don't know. There's so many cool things, but you're right. It's really tough to top a beholder. Hey, and Ben Fisher with another link. He linked to the 5-room dungeons ebook. So that would be my suggestion. Mike Stafford said, I use the 5-room dungeon method for adventure campaign design, the fractal way. Each room can lead to another 5-room dungeon. It's great. Leaves a lot of room to play as the DM. Yeah, man, and it's awesome. He gives that away for free. It's fan-written. So the styles will vary, from 5-room dungeon to 5-room dungeon. But overall, I think it's a really great resource. Very, very cool. Rob says, super dungeons present another challenge. Often you'll have to retreat from the dungeon and return to it later. The trick is showing that the dungeon has developed on the party's return. Maybe the inhabitants have barricaded it now. Maybe all the strongest enemies are now waiting for them in the first room. Totally. Living, breathing dungeon. Traps reset. More guard patrols. And the other thing I would do is I'd make it difficult for the players to leave. Because, again, it's not a video game. You don't just clear the first level and then clear the second level. It's like the first level happens. Well, oops, you didn't realize you set a fire. Well, now the first level's on fire. So some of the other denizens from maybe guarding outside come to put out that fire. But guess what? Now there's a fire happening, and you have to wait. And so make it difficult. Going into a complex of multiple rooms full of threats, dangers, and monsters should feel foreign and dangerous. 50 Minotaur warriors waiting for them knock on the door. Just you see the little and it's one big eye. Who is it? We're the bad guys. here to help you out. Josh goes and says, combined 5-room dungeons, dungeon fractals. There's a really good Gnome Stew article about that. Mike Stafford said, exactly. Gotta love that fractal approach. Minotaurs were having an AtCon when you arrived. Enoch says, I know what my mission statement is. I want to create an encounter that feels like a dungeon adventure using cultists and monsters and puzzles similar to something like Uncharted or Tomb Raider. There you go. So my method is I go through that list and I pick one thing that matches the mission statement, and that's where I start. Meaning, I want it to feel like a dungeon adventure. Well, what do you mean by a dungeon adventure? Obviously the location, right? So, boom, it takes place in a dungeon. Using cultists, monsters, and puzzles, tie those together somehow. Choose one. What do you want to start with? A cultist, a monster, a puzzle? What do you want to lead up to? That kind of thing. And then, similar to Uncharted or Tomb Raider, I think you mean like that discovery, treasure hunter kind of feel. So I'd use a lot of timers. I'd use a lot of closing doors, rolling traps, Indiana Jones style stuff. Well, this has been fantastic. I had a lot of pent-up offhand attack, ladies and gentlemen. And I love you all. This is amazing. If you found this useful at all, follow us on Facebook. Make sure you hit the button down there to get the notifications when we go live, and especially if if you haven't liked our page yet, make sure to like it so you get a notification. I was thinking that too, Kyle. I think maybe because there's liking it and then there's also following, where it gives you the notifications. I think that's different. So make sure to do both. And if you're watching this on YouTube, listen, if you want to be uncommonly good at D&D and hyper creative, that's what we're all about at Tabletop Terrors. Just crush that subscribe button, and you get 50 XP for doing that. And visit the dungeon, which is what I call the comments, and click on some of those links below. Join the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group. Check out some of our books on absolutetabletop.com. But you're the best. You're Tapterians. Sláinte to you. And until next time, may your dice roll high.